I always say to families when I work with them one-on-one that sleep is definitely my lane. However, sleep and feeding are so intertwined, and oftentimes families ask me for suggestions with feeding schedules as they relate to sleep, especially because when we are working on independent sleep habits, we want to often break feed to sleep association. So today we will be talking about sleep, feeding, and nutrition and how they are all intertwined, interconnected, and how good sleep and good nutrition can affect each other in positive ways. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Sarah Bossio, and as the lead certified pediatric sleep expert and owner of Your Zen Baby Sleep, I work with exhausted parents of children ages 0 to 8 years old. I help them to establish flexible and sustainable schedules, peaceful bedtimes, and teach their children to sleep through the night so that the entire family can get the rest they need and deserve. So let's get right into talking about how feeding, nutrition, and sleep are all interconnected and how they can have positive impacts for each other. As another disclaimer, I want to make sure that you are following your pediatrician or registered dietitian's advice about the amount of milk, so breast or formula intake that your baby is getting, and the amount of solids that your baby or toddler is intaking throughout the day as your primary resource for nutrition, because sleep is my lane. However, what we know is that when our babies are full, right, when their bellies are nice and full, and when we work on nice full feeds, what this means is that they are able to sleep for longer stretches, both at naps and overnight. It's important that we aren't obsessing about feeds. So I really want to empower you, especially if your baby is younger, to take a deep breath and relax and to work on the full feed. Make sure we're not snacking, right? So as your baby gets a little bit older, once we're going closer to the 3 or 4 month age, try to elongate the feeds so that we are stretching the time between feeds to be 2 or 3 hours apart. We're not doing snack feeds as often so that we can get a fuller feed in, so that we have more time to sleep in between feedings, right? And this way, we are able to get longer naps. But I don't want the obsessiveness to take over your life about getting full feeds and pumping them up with ounces and pumping them up with breast milk. And I'm talking to the younger version of myself here, because this is something that I was so hyper-focused on when my daughters were younger. It is really easy to get lost in the soup of the numbers and counting the ounces, and also counting the minutes of the sleep, right? But really just focusing on the general picture and the general idea that the more satiated your children are, comfortable your children are, the better able they are going to be able to fall asleep and stay asleep for a longer period of time. It's important to talk about toddlers in this realm too. So I want to make sure that toddlers are having a well-balanced diet. Which is so hard, right? This is a tall order. Our toddlers love anything that looks brown, right? If you think about like all their food, right? It's like chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, pancakes, like think about like the brown, nothing colored, right? No variety. Or it's like berries and it costs you a fortune, or anything that's sugar filled, or goldfish is another brown in the brown category, right? What can be really challenging, but is very important, is to have a well-rounded and well-balanced diet for your toddler. So proteins, carbs, and healthy fats are really helpful to fill your toddler, to not only fuel their energy, but to sustain them for longer periods of time. So like goldfish is gonna fill them up very quickly, but not be able to sustain their belly for a long stretch of time. It's not a really great snack to give them right before bed. What I would love for you to give them right before bedtime is like a peanut butter and a banana, right? So we're gonna fill them up with a nice protein and a carb, and that's gonna help them to sustain them and stretch them over the bedtime for a longer period of time. Bonus if you add a yogurt pouch to it, because that extra protein boost will really help fill their belly. The other ingredient that we want to be careful of, which, listen, I had toddlers once too, and I know this is also challenging, is just the sugar intake, you know? I know that there are lots of Instagram reels, TikToks about, red dye 40 and all of these different ingredients in our food, and do your research as you see fit for your family for all of the extra ingredients. But the one that I want to focus on for the purposes of this video is sugar specifically. So what we know is that toddlers really can have a very big response to sugar and extra sugar intake, and there's lots of sugar in our food today, especially processed food, which is often what we grab when we're grabbing snacks for our toddler, right? They're easy, they're on the go, and our toddlers are always snacking. So just be mindful of your sugar intake when you are serving your children food, and especially as we get closer to the bedtime hour, it'll cause a spike in their metabolism, and then they're going to crash, and this is really going to affect their ability to fall asleep and stay in a deep sleep, especially at bedtime, the beginning of the night, and through the night. An important thing to keep in mind when we are looking at feeding and sleeping schedules is just that, having a schedule. When we talk about our body's circadian rhythm, so our biological clock, around the age of 4 months, our bodies establish this clock. It doesn't just dictate sleep, it also dictates our digestive system, our hormones, our cardiovascular system, our immune system. Lots of functions are dictated by this 24-hour clock. So basically what it means is that at certain times of the day, our body is going to tell us to do certain things on a 24-hour system. So we need to, for the most part, again, this is dependent on individual circumstances, pediatrician recommendations, and your child's needs for overnight feeds. But let's just say for the general public that most children need to rest and digest in the 12 hours that they're sleeping overnight, right? So your digestive system is shut off and taking a break for those 12 hours overnight. During the 12 hours during the daytime, right, they are going to be eating. That means we want to be on an eating schedule during the daytime, so your digestive system is doing the work during the daytime. And at nighttime, your sleep system is doing the work overnight. During the daytime, what can be helpful is being on somewhat of a feeding schedule, right? Whether that be with the bottle, the breast, or like we do as adults, have lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then with maybe set times for snacks in between for your toddlers to make sure that they are satiated on a schedule. The important thing to keep in mind for our babies is that we want to avoid feeding to sleep unless they're teeny tiny. So our little newborns, it's almost nearly impossible to avoid feeding to sleep because they're sleeping all the time. As our children get older, in order to promote nice full feeds, we want to feed when they wake up so that they are awake, they're nice and aware, they are receiving a full feed, and then we play. And then we can ensure that they are going to sleep from an awake state, or if you're choosing assisted sleep, you can assist to sleep in another way. But we are not associating feeding with sleep, we are associating feeding with hunger. I love that you are here to get the best sleep tips, and I encourage you to check out some other accounts from registered dietitians and feeding experts for more resources on feeding tips for your little ones. Because again, sleep is totally my lane and I love teaching sleep and I love giving you information on what I know works with feeding and sleep, but feeding is definitely not something that I'm going to be able to advise you 100% on with 100% confidence, and I think it's something that I work in conjunction with other professionals on. However, if you do have questions about this video, I would love for you to leave a comment. It's one of my favorite parts of this work is interacting with my audience. On your way down, please give the video a like so that I know that you appreciated and liked this content. And be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you're the first to know about any new published content. As always, from my living room to yours, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.